Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk now about how to think about comparing the two stories that you have chosen or are in the process of choosing for your research paper. Now, I realize that we're very early in the process and you may not have even read all of the stories yet. However, it is time to start thinking about this because you do have brainstorming that's coming up due in about a week. And then after that, you'll have the rough draft. So, the first thing you should do, of course, is read the assignment for the literary analysis essay, and it gives you some suggestions on which two stories to choose. You can always read ahead if any of the stories sound interesting to you that you haven't read yet, or not just interesting, but that you might want to do for your paper. So, the first thing we have here is a definition of a comparison. So, a comparison is a systematic strategy for analyzing and evaluating the similarities of two or more things. And a contrast is simply a comparison that emphasizes differences rather than similarities. If you've read the assignment, you know that we are emphasizing similarities and not differences. Maybe the two stories or the story and the play. Remember, you can pick one of the stories and compare it to A Raisin in the Sun. Maybe the two stories you choose are in the matching pairs I mentioned on the assignment, or maybe they have similar themes or overarching ideas. And your text will almost certainly have differences too. I mean, we know that all texts are different, but the point of a comparison is to analyze similarities more than differences. You can examine the contrasts, but it's a kind of critical thinking that makes you really think about the connections across texts. So that's the aim of this assignment, is to connect the texts, to think about how you think they connect and what we can learn about life, about humanity, about ourselves, about society, about the world by thinking of these two texts in comparison. So there are two ways to organize paragraphs in a comparison essay. One is known as divided, which is also known as block. And block comparison divides paragraphs in your paper where several paragraphs are devoted to text A and then several paragraphs to text B. What you must remember in this block format, though, is to link text B back to text A always when you use this strategy. That would unify the essay rather than making it two separate essays. One on everyday use and then one short essay on A Raisin in the Sun, for example. One way in a block comparison to do the linkage is to analyze two or three things about text A and analyze the same two or three things about text B. Always make sure that you connect text B back to text A. And then another way to organize paragraphs in a comparison essay is called point by point, which is also known as alternating. With point by point comparison, the details of the texts are presented in matched pairs. Sometimes these pairs are in alternating paragraphs, and sometimes these pairs are in the same paragraph. So it would be one paragraph on text A and then the next paragraph on text B, talking about the same issue. Sometimes one paragraph would include both text A and B. So that's point by point. How will you organize your paper overall, knowing these things now? Number one, you may write your entire paper in block format with several paragraphs about text A written first, then several paragraphs about B as it compares to A. Number two, you may write your entire paper in alternating or point by point format with one paragraph about text A, then one about text B, and so on through the paper, or one paragraph with both text A and text B, the next paragraph with both text A and text B, and so on. Or number three, you may alternate between block and point by point format with some paragraphs in block and some in point by point. And I would say that Students have used all three of these types successfully in the past when I've had this assignment. The one that I would say is the most common is number 3, where occasionally students will use the alternating format, but then move back for 4 paragraphs in a row to the block format. So what can you compare in the texts? If you think back to the very first slideshow that I presented and that I posted on short stories, it had the 6 elements of short stories, and I have those listed here. Those are the things that you can compare. That's what makes the most sense to compare. Of course, you can also discuss and compare the authors, or you can discuss one author if you're comparing the 2 Edgar Allan Poe short stories. You can compare the plots, you can compare themes, you can compare style, literary devices such as symbols, allusions, foreshadowing, flashback. You can compare the setting, you can compare the narrative point of view. Is it first or third person? Is the first person narrator reliable or unreliable? Why does narrative point of view matter for your interpretation? And how do those narrative points of view connect? And so one way to brainstorm, and I'm going to try and draw here, and it's not going to be very good, but we'll see what happens, okay? So one way to brainstorm is to use the old-fashioned Venn diagram that you've probably learned about since you were young. So you've got 2 circles here, right? And so I didn't draw the circles very well because the overlapping connecting things are what you want to concentrate on, but these are the similarities right here in this section. So you'd have text A over here, text B over here, and you'd write the differences out in this portion. I would make the diagram so that similarities actually have more space. So that way you can start listing what's similar between text A and text B. And then another way to brainstorm is to draw a line down the center of your paper like this, right? And then, or even make a big T, and then you have text 1 here and text 2 here, and then you might over to the side put symbols and then themes, and over here under text 1 you would put the symbols that you see in text 1. So if I was writing about the story of an hour, I would put window and door as the symbols in the story of an hour. And then if I was comparing it to the yellow wallpaper, I would write the symbol of the nursery where she has to stay. The wallpaper itself, of course. The diary. There's also a window there in her room that she looks out, and actually where she thinks the woman in the wallpaper has escaped at one point near the end of the story. So then for themes in the Kate Chopin story, I might write, feminist look at marriage. And then for the yellow wallpaper, it's also a feminist look at marriage. And I could go on like this. So that would be a way to connect, and already knowing how to organize the paper, it's going to make it easy to do all of this. Your job, though, is to critically think through the texts and the elements that you wish to compare. So that's what you should be working on this coming week for the most part, is not just finishing up reading the texts, but considering which texts that you're going to choose, because there is an assignment coming up a week from Sunday. So on the 11th, you'll notice that I put a new calendar on the front page of Blackboard. It's actually the same calendar. It's not a new calendar, but it does have the due dates listed for you. And you'll notice on the 11th, there is a brainstorming. So anyway, this is how we're going to initially start working on our paper, and then I will give more information as the week progresses and into even next weekend on writing a rough draft, finding research, things like that. Okay, bye-bye.